I want to do what has not been done in 24 years, balance the federal budget. We're going to balance it.
We have to cut spending.
We don't have a revenue problem in this country. Revenues are up. In fact, they're up at historic levels. What we have is a spending problem.
Reduce the size and scope of government, make it work more efficiently and effectively for the American people.
He wants to balance the budget. I know I do too.
We do not have a revenue problem in the United States of America. We have a spending problem.
What is driving inflation is the growth in federal spending.
You never have the affordability conversation at all.
There's so much to cut, and it has to happen. The national debt is so high.
We haven't had any spending reductions in like 20 years.
We should put the country back on a pathway to fiscal sanity.
Unless this exercise is successful, the ship of America will sink.
The main metric with regard to whether your fiscal house is good or not is the extent to which you're spending.
And so it went way up under COVID. And then what happened was that became basically the new baseline.
Our fiscal house continues to be a mess.
I just don't want America to go bankrupt.
The U.S. does not have a revenue problem. We have a spending problem.
Reducing the reckless levels of spending.
We've got to start bending the spending curve in the right direction.
If we didn't do something about this, then there won't be any money for anything.
We're going to look at how much we're spending, we're going to compare it against how much we should be spending, and we're going to actually rationalize and make sense of the federal budget.
I want to do what has not been done in 24 years, balance the federal budget. We're going to balance.
Hopefully they get that opportunity someday. But in the meantime, guys, it's going to be another one of those Trump streams, another one of those federal policy streams, all about Trump, or as NATO Secretary Mark Rutte calls him, Daddy.
Adam promised me that next week we'll get back to Michigan. So, man, back to rescue.
We will. But anyway, yes. If you guys don't know what that reference was, Trump, the Secretary General of NATO called Trump Daddy this week, which
so weird.
Yeah, the whole narrative that Trump was like bent on sabotaging getting out of NATO couldn't look any worse after this, which is this NATO summit entirely organized to kiss Trump's ass in every way, and it seems to have worked. So anyway, but before you get all the bad news, the good news this week is we've had some awesome Supreme Court decisions, and Matt Wilk is joining us tonight on the road, I believe, to talk about at least two of the biggest ones, which are the one which he has been covering for a long time has been this case on parental rights to withdraw their children from the objectionable content in schools. But then the huge one was the Supreme Court case saying that there can't just be federal judges issuing universal injunctions and blocking federal laws across the entire country. With certain exceptions. But go ahead, Matt. Why don't you give us
those were some. It was a fabulous. I am speaking to you from just outside of Youngstown, Ohio. I dropped my daughter off at a pre-college event, and I tried to get into the Senate to watch the proceedings that were going on live in good government fashion. Everything's closed, even though they're in session, and the rules say that it's open to the public when it's in session. Yeah, whatever. So the two Supreme Court cases, two largest ones that came out on Friday, so they added an extra day because they had 10 cases to go through on Thursday and Friday, and they finish up by the end of June traditionally. I'll go through Trump versus Casa first. So this is the prototypical example of how you get Democrats to do exactly what you expect them to do. So Trump had come out and put out an executive order banning birthright citizenship. And truth be told, birthright citizenship has been recognized by the Supreme Court for almost 100 years. The case
I'm not so sure about that, sir.
Well, there's arguments about it, right? But under Wonkum Arc, which is the current precedent, right? It's the current holding case. Wonkum Arc was a child that was born to people that were Chinese. They were here sort of
residents, I believe.
They were not
an ambassador. Is that right?
No, it's not. They actually weren't here lawfully because at the time there was a law prohibiting any Chinese nationals from coming to America. So they were technically here unlawfully. But that's really never been flushed out in the court, okay? Because what the court tends to see is if certain things are unworkable, and certainly the prevalence of the concept of someone in the 1860s or 1880s coming to this country illegally, they'd have to be a stowaway on a boat. So it wasn't a thing, it wasn't contemplated. In any event, that issue is going to work its way through the courts. But what Trump really wanted to do, more than birthright citizenship, was he wanted a judge to put a permanent injunction against his executive order. And this left-wing judge, which I believe is somewhere out in the Ninth Circuit, took the bait. Absolutely took the bait. Under no circumstances is this legal. We're shutting it down across the country. So what people need to understand is that is something that both sides have objected to over the past about dozen years, right? There is a process by which a person can have their lawsuit cover someone other than themselves, okay? It's not entirely uncommon. The most common thing that people think of is a class action lawsuit, okay? You file a class action lawsuit, you say on behalf of me, and you have to have at least 3 people, and everyone's similarly situated, okay? But there are some big differences between a class action lawsuit and the lawsuit that was filed, the actions or the process that went through here. When you have a class action lawsuit, you have to have what's called commonality of complaints, okay? So, for example, in the case of birthright citizenship, the Democrats would love to have their plaintiff be someone like a visa overstay or the most possible compelling case they could get, right? And the Republicans would like to have that be someone who illegally crossed the border, potentially involved in a crime, was subject to thrown out. Oh, and their spouse had a baby, and that baby's now a citizen. Okay, and when you file a class action lawsuit, you have to have that commonality. If you had 3 people that were in different circumstances, the court would deny the class action certification because the people aren't the same. That's the number one big difference. And the number 2 big difference is when you file a class action lawsuit and you lose, it's over. Okay? When you go for one of these bizarre universal injunctions, you just keep shooting until you find the craziest judge, and then you win, and then it's blocked. Imagine you're a baseball hitter, and the player comes up with a bucket of balls, and all you got to do is hit one of them.
Right. So like the Kilmer Abrego Garcia case, where they judge shopped for to bring the case before a Washington, D.C. district judge.
Perfect. Exactly like that. They want a forum shop. They want to find the most possible, and all they got to do is win one. So if they don't win that one, and the Garcia case is a great one because the guy's a human trafficker, they'll just keep looking around until they find another one. And now, truth be told, there were some universal injunctions that were put that turned down Biden things, like Biden's Title IX executive order, which was held unconstitutional by a lot of different courts. What Article 3, right, student loan forgiveness. Article 3 says that this handles cases and controversies, okay? Actual cases between real people. They do not do, and this is different from the Michigan Supreme Court, they do not do advisory opinions. So you cannot go to the United States Supreme Court and say, hey, justices, I'm wondering, is this law constitutional? That is not a thing under Article 3. Okay? So Trump got them to take the bait. It went to the Supreme Court on the limited issue of are universal injunctions allowed? And Amy Coney Barrett, who, Adam, you haven't been a huge fan of, Patty, you haven't been.
No, and I wonder if
of.
she wasn't chosen to give this to author this opinion, but whatever.
Well,
it was a scathing opinion, almost as if she had to get back in some people's good graces. But I'll take it, I suppose.
Yeah, well, but that's how because judges aren't static; they change over time. Okay, and what you do is you get them to build this sort of callus on their system about if you're worried that they're taking abuse from the outside and they don't like it, you find these cases and you say you write it. And it wasn't just that she wrote the opinion, okay? There were two parts of this. She wrote a very good opinion, which basically said, at the time the Constitution was drafted, and at the time that this particular bill was passed from 1789, that one side has said allowed for universal injunctions. There was no such thing as a universal injunction. It's not what the framers meant. It's not what the passer of the law meant. It's not what the law said. So this was being abused, and this is unconstitutional. Okay.
By the way, I've got her part of her opinion on screen where she's laying into Justice Ketanji Brown Jackson, which I'm sure.
And that was the remarkable thing.
Yeah.
Yeah. The remarkable thing was so people understand how this works. Judges get to. These opinions go back and forth, right? So the opinion writer, which is in this case Barrett, gets to see the dissents and respond to the dissents in her own opinion. All right. And I heard something very interesting over the past couple of days that wasn't immediately obvious. A lot of times when you write an opinion, people will say, I'm signing on to part 1A, 1.2, 1.3, whatever, and not any of the rest.
Yeah, and sometimes they write their own separate opinions and concurrences and disagreements in part and that kind of thing. Yeah.
Right. Exactly. In this case, all 6 justices signed on to the entire thing, including the parts where she puts Ketanji Brown Jackson's arguments through a shredder and basically it just eviscerates her, saying what you're saying not only violates the Constitution, but 200 years of our precedent. That in this case, excuse me, because this involves Donald J. Trump, this judiciary is allowed to give these sort of advisory opinions and say, this law is unconstitutional, and therefore you can't enforce it anywhere in the country.
Yeah, because Justice Ketanji Brown Jackson effectively said that the courts they have unlimited power to check the executive branch or the legislature, presumably, that they are the sole arbiters of all law, and they are effectively tyrants.
Right. Several hundred individual tyrants who, by the way, don't necessarily agree. Okay, so what the court likes to see when they review cases is they don't mind circuit splits. They really like them, right? So judge in Texas says this is okay. A judge in California says no, it's not. You have these well-developed arguments on both sides. Then it goes to the Supreme Court and they say, yep, you know what? We've got this circuit split. We got to resolve it. Right? We can't have 2 different rules. And they like that. And what universal injunctions did is shut that down. Right? You got one judge in Boston who's saying this rule about what was the most recent one about TPS, temporary protected status. It's unconstitutional. Well, now you're not going to develop the record anywhere else with another judge saying, no, actually it is. Right? Because you just need to win once. So Trump wins, no more, and not just wins for himself, wins for the future. If a person wants to sue under a court case and say, hey, this law as it applies to me is unconstitutional, they still can. They can still get injunctive relief. It can still happen right away. But what it's not going to come with is, oh, and by the way, this law is not enforceable against anyone in the country. Because that is
Although there does seem to be
a
little bit of a loophole, which is that the injunction against a challenge policy could be applied to, it can be applied to the individuals or organizations who sued, which normally would be an individual only. But what if it's a state attorney general? What if Dana Nessel files a suit on behalf of everyone in Michigan, and the court says everybody in Michigan is screwed now?
But they're a plaintiff, okay? But what you can't do is file it. She's going to be limited in her venue. And if she loses, she's done. She can't come back and go judge in the 9th Circuit or the 10th Circuit or say, oh, I'm going that way. And now I'll give you an example. Of course, the case I'm very familiar with was the Moms for Liberty Title IX case, which that was filed in Kansas. One of the plaintiffs was the state of Utah, but it included Moms for Liberty as a plaintiff. And the judge said, this applies to the states that are impacted. Obviously, it wasn't Michigan because Dana Nessel's not going to sign on to that. But it was all Moms for Liberty members. So there is attached to the order, however many page exhibit, listing every school in which there is a Moms for Liberty member. And they are institutional or organizational plaintiffs exist. But again, there's going to have to be some commonality, and they're going to speak for themselves. And importantly, if they lose, they're done. If the Chamber of Commerce sues, the most recent one I think was on tariffs. Tariffs are bad. Okay, fine. And we're going to sue. That's fine. But if you lose, you can't then go to another area and sue again differently, whereas you could in the previous regime.
Yeah, so this is a huge, huge defeat for this whole method of blocking Trump's agenda, the good parts of the Trump agenda anyway, that the left was going after so harshly. Because they can just get these rogue federal tyrannical judges to just declare that the Constitution doesn't apply in their cases.
Right, and it got to be so ridiculous that the judge in Massachusetts, the Supreme Court gave an order. Hey, by the way, this is state. So the judge had issued an order, had something to do with immigration, and then had a hearing and issued an order related to the violation of the first order. And the Supreme Court said that first order is stayed. Yeah. And this judge, the next, I think within hours too, this judge goes out and puts an order out. Yes, the Supreme Court wasn't talking about my second order. It was only talking about my first order. And it's like, you gotta be kidding me.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
Great win. Although I wish they did actually resolve this birthright citizenship issue, which they punted on, because I did look it up. Wong Kim Ark's parents were lawful residents, and the premise that you gain citizenship because your parents were here illegally, something that maybe the court wouldn't be willing to agree with. But this birthright citizenship seems to have come from this dicta from Justice Brennan many years ago, just otherwise out of thin air.
Yeah, the interesting one will be is if there is any appetite, and I don't know, you're going to talk about, I don't know if you're going to talk about reconciliation and all that, because if you passed a law, if Congress passed a law that said, hey, look, this is who citizenship is offered to, right? Right? You're a legal permanent resident. Yep, your kids are a citizen. You're on a long-term visa. Okay, your kids are citizen. You're on a tourist visa. Nope. You're here illegally. Nope. Right? If they put some guide rails around it, I can guess that the Supreme Court would probably be like, yeah, does this violate the Constitution? It's a much closer call. So
yeah,
whether
they're never in a million years grant birthright citizenship to illegal aliens, it'd be ridiculous. That's just something the court
and particularly the argument can be made, hey, this really didn't exist anywhere in the time where certainly the 14th Amendment was passed and this particular case was heard. This wasn't the thing. So change circumstances, right? You know, sometimes that wins the day, and sometimes it doesn't. We'll see.
The 14th Amendment was about ensuring that freed slaves were citizens, not the children of illegal aliens, which is ridiculous.
Well, and as another example, it took an act of Congress in the 1920s to grant Native Americans citizenship. They were on American land, but it was always recognized that the dual sovereignty between the United States and Native American tribes, there was issue there. So Congress resolved it. Congress has said, you're citizens, congratulations, right?
Yep.
Now, if Congress were to do something similar and say, these are the circumstances, does the Supreme Court say, hey, the president thinks and Congress thinks, and we look at that, we don't think that's unconstitutional? Maybe, but that requires, you know, when people say it requires an act of Congress, they mean it's very, very difficult, and that's basically the same.
Well, hey, Matt, I do want to move on, but we have one more case to talk about. And so just give me the 5-minute story on the Mahmoud case, and then maybe we'll come back and have you back on another time. We can delve into this in more depth because we have more news to cover. But
yeah, absolutely. Mahmoud is my favorite case of all time. It set a new thing, something that never happened in 249 years of this country's history. The Supreme Court opinion included color pictures. And basically it was because the books, so this is about parents that were in Montgomery County, Maryland, and they wanted to opt their kids out of LGBTQ content in the elementary school, okay? And the district first said, sure, no problem. And then when they got blowback from their left-wing advocates, they said, no, you can't opt out. Everybody's got to learn this stuff.
And by the way, Matt, as a quick footnote, Montgomery County, Maryland is no ordinary school district. It is the largest school district in the metro Washington, D.C. area. I know because I went there. Overwhelmingly represented by international students and families of Washington politicians and bureaucrats. And it is the mill for the next generation of government officials and foreign officials and all kinds of operatives.
Well, interesting you say that, because one of the things about this case is the plaintiffs were Muslims, Jews, and Ukrainian Orthodox. So they had the whole spectrum, and everyone wanted to opt their kids out of this. And the courts and the district said no. In the course of the case, in a way to get rid of it, first the district said, well, these are just books in a library. Then the district said, well, we're just reading them to them. And then the court said, well, then the evidence showed, well, yeah, we're reading it to them and we're talking to them about it. And in this particular opinion, this was a 6-3 opinion. This was written by Justice Alito. And a lot of times when you see the case and you say who wrote it, you know who won. And Alito goes in, and it's got so much factual information in there. These books are repulsive, including Puppy Pride, where the puppy gets lost in the Pride Parade. And this book is to be read to kindergartners who are 5 years old. Kids who are probably, some of them think they're actually Superman. And we're going to talk to these kids about these sort of topics. And the book came with an addendum. Tell teachers how to handle these things. So if there's one of the books, I think it was like for 3rd graders, is about boy's uncle marries. He's gay man. He marries a man. Okay. And regardless how you feel about that issue, that's inappropriate. What's really inappropriate is in the manual, it said, well, how do you respond if a kid says, I think that's wrong? And the answer was, you should reprimand the child and say people can marry whoever they love.
Amazing.
That's beyond wrong. Okay, so what did the court say in this case? The court said that parents have a fundamental right to opt their children out of material that violates sincerely held religious beliefs. Okay, and my organization, as you know, I run an organization called Get Kids Back to School. We work with parents and school board members across the state. We'll probably be doing a training on this in the next couple of weeks. One of the things that it provided to parents that isn't immediately obvious is if you have the right to opt out, you also have the right to know. You have the right to finally know what books and materials are put on your kids, and no one can deny you that right. And we're going to go
What happens when they do deny it? Because they don't care. They still try to fight these rulings, these school boards and stuff.
Well, that's great question. So now, since this is a fundamental right, this is in the First Amendment, to violate those rights now violates Section 1983 of the U.S. Code. It provides for damages and attorney fee shifting. So any parent gets to walk in and say, look, you're going to tell me what we're teaching, or you're going to be subject to a lawsuit, and there are damages, and my attorney gets paid by you. And now there still may be some districts that want to have that fight, and I would welcome it. I will have a arm's length list of attorneys who are happy to take those cases and sue and get paid for failing to disclose to parents what's being taught. Because that's exactly what happened in this case. And the court's ruling was very clear. You have a fundamental right. And it was so bad that Randy Weingarten lamented after the case. Randy Weingarten is the head of the teachers union, and she said, "Oh well, bad facts make bad law." And the story is they're really, really ticked that this county took this case, that they didn't give up to keep the case out of the Supreme Court. But they did, and they lost, and parents now have this right.
Fantastic. Well,
didn't she resign?
She resigned as from the DNC.
Oh.
Yes. Isn't it odd that the president of the teachers union has been a 23-year member of the DNC executive committee? Yeah, kind of odd.
Imagine my shock.
Yeah, exactly. And Becky Pringle, who's the head of the AFT, American Federation of Teachers, which is the other union, and she's just as bad. And they're apoplectic that they no longer have the right to jam LGBTQ content down people's throats. And I can tell you what, the school districts should be happy. They should be happy that this is happening over the summer, because they have the summer to come in and clean that crap out of the system so they don't get embarrassed and they don't get sued, because it's gonna be both.
Wow.
Yeah, these decisions were all coming at the end of the season for the U.S. Supreme Court, so we probably won't get many more. We won't get any Supreme Court decisions for at least another couple of months. Is that right?
No, actually, there's something that happens on Monday, and they call it the cleanup.
A few decisions still have to be penned out, right?
Right. So the cleanup conference. So what they will do is they sometimes they take cases and they hold them, and they say, hey, I want to take this case and hold on to it. I'm not going to accept the case or reject the case. I'm just going to hold on to it because there's another case whose ruling will likely change that. Like, for example, I've got to see if West Virginia versus BPJ, that's a case involving Title IX and a transgender child, or boy who thinks he's a girl, I guess is the better way to put it, and
same thing.
Playing in sports. Same thing, playing in sports. And they didn't rule the case one way or the other, but there have been two cases involving that issue. One is called U.S. versus Scrimetti, which was the transgender medicine case, and that was another huge win for parents and families. And whether they're going to probably say, we're going to send that back to the appellate court, say, take a look at Scrimetti and take another look at this case and see if you still think it's the case. And that's pretty common. That generally happens Monday. That's called the cleanup conference.
Well, at any rate, we will have more time in the near future to talk about the details of these cases. And then maybe in the next season, the Supreme Court can re-examine some issues they may have punted on, such as a certain gun rights case, which, come to think of it, the Congress just punted on a gun rights issue in the BBB, which I guess is our transition there to the next topic, which
Yeah,
Matt,
there's a
talk about that.
Yeah, they something that was out. They actually punted on the redistricting case. They carried it over to the October 2025 term.
Hey, Matt, you're actually really
summertime. We
coming
can talk
up
about that later.
right now. We're having trouble hearing you. Your signal's kind of coming and going there.
Well, I will catch up with you on those cases, and we'll talk soon.
All right, sounds great, buddy. Thanks for coming in.
Thanks, Matt.
All right, well, there you go, folks. We'll have another episode with Matt to talk about those cases and more coming up. But yeah, as I mentioned, the big story this week has been the bill known as BBB, which is ironic and acronym.
Business Bureau? No, I'm just kidding.
Where have I heard BBB before? And there's this funny. I stumbled upon this on Twitter just now, where someone asked Grok, "Is it true that BBB has sex changes for minors in it?" And Grok responded, mistakenly confusing the BBB, the Big Beautiful Bill. I assume that's a reference to.
Grok is a lot of this.
Build back better.
Not good.
Same exact branding as Joe Biden's big fat pile of garbage. Although, to be fair, the BBB is not entirely garbage. There's actually some good things in it. An extension of the tax cuts, immigration enforcement. But I think here's a point we have to start with, folks. There is nothing in the BBB that Congress could not have done all by itself, but for the fact that they play these procedural games to trick people into saying that there was no other way that they could do this stuff. So, for example, there is this. Here's something I found from some random guy, well-named Eric Bott, very, very appropriate name for this guy. And he's got Trump saying something, "A vote against the BBB is a vote to raise taxes 68%, which is not exactly true. There's Trump tax cuts that are going to expire, and the BBB would extend them. But it makes you wonder why they couldn't just extend them in the first place. And in just the past 24 hours, there has been this amazing dust-up where the Senate parliamentarian, who apparently was first appointed by, I want to say Barack Obama, but I could be wrong. I'm pretty sure it was a Democrat, though. This woman named Heather McDonough, saying all these things that are in the BBB can't be there because they're policies, and we can't have these policies in a spending bill because she apparently gets to decide that question, which seems a little strange, but I guess the Senate makes rules and she's enforcing the Senate rules. Can the Senate amend the rules? Well, gee, who's in the majority? And obviously you wouldn't want to have a freestanding bill that just extends the Trump tax cuts because it'd be subject to the filibuster, which you can't have you can't exempt the filibuster under Senate rules unless you're Senate Majority Leader Harry Reid, the Democrat, who just killed the filibuster for judicial nominees. But the Republicans could never do a thing like that. They could never change the rules of the Senate, or could never replace a Senate parliamentarian with a Republican. Couldn't possibly do that. So all of a sudden, a lot of people, you probably saw these folks on X pointing out how crazy this is, that an appointee just gets to decide these things cannot be in this Senate bill. And as if all that wasn't crazy, and then, and of course, Senate Majority Leader John Thune, the Republican, comes out and says, "Yeah, we're not going to argue with the Senate with Senate parliamentarian on any of these things. Why would we defile the holy procedures of the U.S. Senate by overruling the parliamentarian? We would never allow that thing that the Democrats say they will do the moment they get into power. We would never do a thing like that." And so they strip out all these things in the BBB that were good to make the BBB worse, including, by the way, that bit about defunding transgender sex education, the very thing that one person on X was asking about, but also some other bad things or some other good things were stripped out, like a bill to amend the National Firearms Act, to no longer ban suppressors, for example. And so the bill got worse and worse and worse. And then the strangest thing happened, which is that J.D. Vance walks in and overrules the Senate parliamentarian. Oh, okay. Well, then I guess this whole exercise was for nothing whatsoever, because apparently the Senate parliamentarian can't really remove anything that the Republicans don't want her to. We could just overrule her. Okay. Well, great. So surely all of the things.
So wait a minute. He overruled her on his own, or he came and broke a tie?
He overruled her. Because the vice president is also president of the Senate, which typically is just a tie-breaking vote, but apparently also has, some rulemaking authority. This is news to me, but this is what happened. Is J.D. Vance walks in and says, well, we're going to actually put back in that ban on federal funding for green energy, the Green New Deal that the Senate parliamentarian said we couldn't have. Okay, well, great. So you're going to overrule her on all of the things she took out, right? No, not everything. Not everything. So apparently, is one of the big ones was, I'm trying to find this now, this National Firearms Act ban. And that's just something that never got put back in. And all these gun rights groups are just absolutely furious now because they're like, this passed in the bill. It was taken up by the parliamentarian. Now you have just proven to us that you could put it back in, so you didn't. Why didn't you? And, who am I to speculate, but there's an obvious answer staring us in the face, which is that they didn't want to. They didn't want to put that back in the bill, which is extremely annoying, especially for the gun rights people, not just because it's their issue, but also because that's like the kind of thing you would really want to have in a spending bill, where it's like one of these must-pass bills, because they know that the Senate's never going to want to actually do anything pro-Second Amendment at all, ever. But if they can slip it into a budget bill, great, There's never going to be a standalone vote on repealing the suppressor ban in the NFA. Never. So they just got completely screwed. And the Republicans, for their part, just proved to them that they got screwed. So
because they didn't put it back in, and now are they still in the process of reading this thing?
No, that's over with. It took them 16 hours, but the Democrats made them read the whole thing, which they did. It took like 16 hours. Same thing as we did, or I think it was Ron Johnson did with the Democrats bill, which just reminds you, and this is a good play by the Democrats for two reasons. One is because it took some time, but secondly, because it reminds you this was the very thing we used to say we hated, was doing this giant omnibus 10 million topics at once bill.
Yep.
And the whole reason why is because, according to Republicans, they can't do anything except through reconciliation, because that's the only thing that's filibuster proof. Unless, of course, they just end the filibuster, which the Democrats have said over and over and over again. The moment we take power, we are ending the filibuster.
But they just had power and didn't do it.
Huh?
They just had power, the Democrats, and they didn't end it.
Right, but when they were last in power, they had two Democrats who refused to. One was Kirsten Sinema from Arizona. The other was Joe Manchin from West Virginia.
Right.
And they said, we don't want to end the filibuster. We're digging our heels in. So the Democrats made certain that every single candidate for U.S. Senate was screened to promise on paper, we are going to vote to end the filibuster, so that the moment they take power, filibuster gone. The presumption being they might take the House too, and then they can just pass anything and everything they possibly want to, including impeachment, remove the U.S. president, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. So knowing full well that the Democrats will kill the filibuster the moment they're back into office again, Republicans say, sorry, folks, our hands are tied. We can't do anything except through this one BBB, which we have to do. So all the things that you demand, like tax cut extensions, we just can't do it, folks, unless you also swallow the things that we know you hate. Like, for example, here's a great one. How'd this happen? There was a proposal to tax remittances for non-resident Indians. So the people coming in from the country of India to take our tech jobs. And the same way Mexicans come in and then they send their share of their paychecks back to their families in Mexico. Indians are doing the same thing. So if you want to discourage illegal immigration, a great way to do it would be tax the remittances, so they're paying money to pay to be here. At least mitigate that by making them an income stream, because they send the money they make here back to their home countries. So tax that, right? So the House was going to raise the tax from 3.5% to 5%. The Senate said, no, actually, let's not do that. Let's cut it down from 3.5% to just 1%. Gee, why do you think the Republicans didn't have that as its own standalone bill? or how about the state and local tax deduction? Isn't that a great one? If you haven't seen this story, a lot of states have very, very high taxes. Very, very high taxes. New York has very high tax. I mean, we have high taxes, but not like New York or California. They have really high taxes. So they have a special thing called the state and local tax deduction, which is, if you're in these super high tax states, guess what? The feds will count that tax payment against your federal income tax. So they're bailing out the high tax states from the low tax states effectively. We don't get that deduction. Only people from New York and California get that. So guess what?
We're still moving.
Yeah. So the blue state Republicans demanded that we raise the cap from $10,000 to $40,000 for the next 4 years, which is never going to go down again. It's only going to go higher. So congratulations, the bailout, the incentive to go back to blue states now, because they get this free federal taxpayer bailout of $30,000 more than what they got in the first place, was in this big, beautiful bill, which of course is part of the reason why, between that and this, massive tax cut on remittances rather than tax increase on remittances, is why this proposal increases the national debt by 20 to 30 trillion dollars, which they say it's going to add $4 trillion to the debt. They mean on top of the 20 to 30 trillion dollars is going to be incurred anyway over the next 10 years. And the thing that boggles my mind is that Republicans with the majority in the House and the Senate, they know how this all works. They know they could vote for these things as individual bills. They could put them all on record. How do you think these blue state Republicans will vote on some of these things if they were forced to be on? Okay, maybe on this one because they're from these blue states. But a lot of things, like if we put for up and down votes, like say not giving taxpayer subsidies to illegal aliens, or like Thom Tillis, the senator from North Carolina who voted no on the bill. He claimed he was voting no because he didn't want the Medicaid deduction. He didn't want the cut in Medicaid, government welfare, the thing Republicans campaign on not supporting. If there was an actual up or down vote on that by itself, how many Republicans do you think would really vote no on that? I don't think their base would tolerate that. But they get to play the games they always play. I voted for the BBB because it did yada, 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 and ignore the fact that it did the opposite, which everybody knows when the campaign season comes around, it doesn't help them because they get attacked. They get attacked for the bad stuff in the bill anyway. But this would happen. In fact, is a perfect example of this. Trump has now launched a jihad against Thomas Massie, one of the only Republicans in the House to vote against it, and he's also probably, I assume, going to start on Rand Paul too. So in the U.S. Senate, they just had the vote to pass this bill. There were all the Democrats voted against it because they're Democrats, not because they oppose spending. Thom Tillis voted no, and has now actually retired. He was threatened by a primary challenge from Trump. He may have been announcing his retirement anyway because he was already kind of a well-known rhino. He was blocking Trump's nominees. He was very pro-immigration, lousy in a lot of issues. So he may have been retiring anyway. But anyway, he's now said he's retiring. So as it turns out, the only Republican who voted no on the budget deal on principle was Rand Paul. Rand Paul in Kentucky. But in the House, of course, Thomas Massie voted no. And so Trump posted this extremely long comment. And as we've now heard, he has now launched a super PAC to recruit a candidate against Thomas Massie. He released an ad buy. He posted an ad attacking Thomas Massie. on incidentally the 1-year anniversary of his wife's untimely passing a year ago. Just awful. And here's what Trump said about Thomas Massie, and you can see he's attacking Rand Paul in this also. He votes no on virtually everything put before him. Rand Paul Jr. No matter how good something may be, and people have posted his ringing endorsement of Massie 2 years ago.
After he called him a grandstander when he wouldn't vote for the other the safe. What was it called? Was it the Saves Act? CARES Act.
Oh yeah, another giant spending bill.
Yeah, he called him a grandstander. Remember?
For Trump to call anybody a grandstander, my God. But yeah, he says it right here. Who thinks it's good politics for him to have the highest level nuclear weapon? It's so obnoxious how outrageous this stuff is. In fact, Massie even pointed out himself that the BBB had actually, because of what the Senate parliamentarian did, it actually, by their own logic, put the sex change thing back in. I'm trying to think. I thought I had the. I'm looking for the clip now, but I don't think I see it here. But I know I had it, where Massie was on X. He says, the Senate parliamentarian put the sex change for minors things back in the bill. They're attacking me for opposing the bill for not having this in it. Now it has it in it. And again, that's that same dishonest play that they make when they're trying to attack someone on his record. When they have these omnibus bills, they can pick and choose anything. Just say, well, this is a bad thing in the bill. Whatever it is, they'll find something. And that's what you get when you have these colossal, gigantic bills here. But here's the takeaway, folks. Why is Donald Trump waging jihad against Thomas Massie? Does he apparently he doesn't think we have a majority to worry about in the next election, which is, I think, a big relief for all of us, because why do we need to give any money to any Republican federal candidates for Congress? They've got money to burn. They're spending it on attacking Republicans. Allegan News says, no, Rand Paul would vote for it on an interview with Tim Pool, but the attack on Massie is dumb. Well, Rand Paul didn't vote for it. Rand Paul voted against it. He says, if they had put out of the Fed and Department of Education and repeal the National Firearms Act, they could have gotten Massie to vote for it. Yeah, probably so. When I worked for John Riley in the State House, when they had these omnibus budget deals, my recommendation to him was, I said, look, you can't be seen as completely impossible to please because they'll just ignore what you're doing. But you don't want to you want to just say, I'll vote for whatever you do, guys. You just give them something that is your conditions to get your vote. And in John Riley's case, it was more equitable funding for colleges, because like U of M was getting $3, Wayne State $4 for every $1 that the local college, Oakland University, would get. And they told John Riley to buzz off and ignored him. And so he voted no, but they could have gotten his vote if they wanted to. Yeah. So, I mean, to me, folks, this is fighting words. Like, Trump is actively demonizing and attacking and lying about the principal people. Like, if you support BBB because you think the good policies in it are more important than the fiscal responsibility, that's your opinion. That's fine. But this is disgusting. This is disgusting.
Claiming that he writes these, because sometimes he signs them. This one's not signed. Do you think that's a sign, like whether or not like he actually wrote this or one of his people? Or, I mean, it sounds like him.
Yeah, it sounds just like him. And this is going to be a complete waste of money too, by the way.
That's like we have like a razor thin majority. And this is what we're doing, or he's doing. I mean,
everybody in Kentucky knows that his constituents love him. Like, he's extremely well loved. This whole play is not going to work. It's extremely pointless.
Yeah.
There's actually a really great article about this. Here, I'll post it on the screen real quick. I'm not going to read it word for word. But the article, you should check it out. It's called "Can Thomas Massie Survive Trump's Swamp Machine?" And it's talking about all these things that the attacks here, and pointing out that Massie is one of the most consistent, principled people in Washington, and that his principles are the MAGA principles. That fiscal responsibility was the thing that Trump has often said we need to have. and pointing out that Massie has been more committed to them than Trump was.
Yeah.
We'll talk about the Iran thing in a second here. So, he goes on here and then says this: while others orbit Trump moods, Massie orbits defending documents, while others contort themselves to fit the day's narrative. He hasn't bent once in over a decade. It's not just a primary, it's a referendum on whether the Republican Party still has room for Republicans, not sycophants. If he's the last Republican who remembers.
We see that at the local level too, right?
Huh?
We see that even when our activism or things we do, right? People we interact with at our level, right? If you just say one thing about Trump, like, oh, that was a bad decision, or, whatever.
Yeah.
Well, why do you hate Trump? I'm like, I don't hate Trump. I'm just talking about like this one thing, whatever. But
yeah.
Well, again, there's a lot of sycophants.
Yeah. Alga News says Trump saying S about Massie is one thing, but to put money against him is a step too far. And dumb. Yeah, he treats his enemies, his friends, worse than his enemies.
Yeah.
I mean, all of the people in Washington who are actively sabotaging him, I guess Thom Tillis is the exception that proves the rule. But apart from that, he should be the one saying, why isn't he going after John Thune for keeping the filibuster when he knows all it's being used for is to cripple his agenda? Why not talk about that? But it's not the people who have real power in Washington he's going after. It's the people who actually stand on principles. And all the people, there's a billion people on X, I think robots mostly, saying, oh, Massie and Rand Paul, they don't ever get anything accomplished. It's like, yeah, because they vote their principles. And voting is accomplishing something. Like, go after the people that vote for the high taxes and the big spending, not the ones that oppose it. So anyway, this has, and the other weird thing is Trump, he doesn't go after people who question him. Like, here, look at this. This is Mark Levin, who besides being a talking head on Fox, is also a very low level member of the White House. He's got like some role in the National Security Council or something.
Yeah, didn't he just get that too? That was just this week.
So yeah, this is a couple of days ago. So J.D. Vance reportedly pushed back against Israeli officials during an intense phone call, saying the United States should not be directly involved in the war and suggesting the Israelis were going to drag the U.S. into the war. And Mark Levin posts, is this report about Vance accurate? It's very important that we know one way or the other at some point. This is insubordination. This is a threat to the vice president. How come Mark Levin is still in the Trump administration? What about Tammy Bruce? Let me see if I got the clip of Tammy Bruce. Tammy Bruce, who is a State Department spokeswoman, the highest level State Department spokeswoman, who speaks as the foreign policy arm. I don't have the clip of this, of the U.S. government. There's a video that came out of her this week saying the United States is the greatest country in the world next to Israel. Next to Israel. Now, that's kind of
Jewish.
No, she pretends to be Jewish.
Oh,
she like literally.
I would say that, but I would say that like jokingly, like, oh yeah, after Greece or whatever, but not.
Yeah, but you're not a State Department official who represents the voice of the United States.
I'm just Patty.
but no, literally, Tammy Bruce pretends she pretends to be Jewish. She actually, there was an interview where she's talking about how she bought this Star of David necklace. And the jewelry store person says, "I didn't know you were Jewish." She's like, "I'm not, but I wish I was." And she's telling this story to this reporter. Like she's completely crazy. Yeah. Glenn Greenwald was talking
weird.
about.
I used to like her a lot. I mean, her tweets were great. She was great before. I don't know.
Maybe in certain roles she was.
Yeah.
But what kind of mindset does it? And again, don't get me wrong. Tons of people in the administration are Israel firsters, but to be so blatant as to say that out loud to a reporter when you're the State Department spokeswoman and you say the United States is the greatest country next to Israel, and that doesn't cause any sanctions. I mean, that like so much for this America First stuff. Like literally, second country in the world after Israel. Unreal. Anyway, speaking of Israel, this is a good transition point to talk about what's happened.
Yeah, you're really nailing those transitions tonight.
Well, so when we last left off last Sunday, we were in the middle of what looked like the outbreak of World War III, which then came to a very sudden stop. I think it was past Tuesday. After a whole bunch of crazy tweets, including Trump multiple times tweeting out, no surrender. That was a big one. Remember that? Nothing but unconditional surrender. That was it. Unconditional surrender was his demand. There was also this lovely gem. Thomas, this is not America First, folks. It's not politically correct to use the term regime change, but if the current Iranian regime is unable to make Iran great again, why wouldn't there be regime change? Make Iran great again. Which kind of gave away the whole thing. Like, this is supposed to be about not letting Iran get a nuclear weapon, but actually was all about regime change. Well,
Lindsey Graham was on the floor of the Senate. What night was that? Wednesday? With his whole presentation and his board.
Is this comment you're saying in reference to Mark Levin?
Mark Levin was giving a speech Lindsey Graham was talking about regime change on the floor of the Senate, I think Wednesday evening.
Yeah, he doesn't care about South Carolina. It's all about Israel, as he pronounces it. Israel. I kind of like his pronunciation, actually. Israel. Sounds almost like vomiting. But anyway, so this war came to a very sudden crashing stop. And here is Trump's statement about it. Congratulations to everyone. It has been fully agreed to by and between Israel and Iran. There will be a complete and total ceasefire for 12 hours, at which point the world will be officially considered ended. Officially, Iran will start the ceasefire. And upon the 12th hour, Israel will start the ceasefire. That's kind of weird, isn't it? By the way, isn't it a little strange? For 12 hours, Iran will start the ceasefire. And then after 12 hours later, after Israel gets the last bombing in, then they will start the ceasefire. And then it will all be over and done with. Which I have some questions about the permanence of this ceasefire. And first off, thank God, as Tucker said, thank God. This could have gone on and been a whole lot worse. Mm-hmm. But of course, the catalyzing event, I suppose you could say, was that the United States bombed Iran's nuclear facilities in such a way as to cause 0 casualties. And then Iran fired some missiles at American military bases in such a way as to cause 0 casualties. And then everybody declared themselves the winner. Apparently, Israel said, we won the war, and Iran said, we won the war. Trump says, we won the war. Well, I guess let's start with the question of what the actual outcome of all this stuff is. Because first off, so Israel, in fact, it was the defense minister of Israel, came out in an interview a day or two ago. And he says, contradicting Trump, who repeatedly said, we could have assassinated Khamenei, the Ayatollah. We could have assassinated him, but because we knew exactly where he was, we could have dropped the bomb on him, but we didn't want to. In fact, Israel wanted to drop the bomb on him, and we said, no, Israel, do not assassinate Ayatollah Khamenei. Don't do that. Trump said this in multiple posts on Truth Social. Well, then the Israeli foreign minister, whose name is also Israel, by the way, comes out and says, actually, we wanted to assassinate the Ayatollah. We couldn't find him. We did not ask the Americans permission. If we were able to, we would have. And by the way, we are still going to assassinate him if at all we possibly can. He says this on Israel's Channel 13 news media in its big, long interview, which is kind of incredible when you think about it, you know? Like, usually you don't just come out and say we're going to assassinate a head of state for a foreign country, but they say, yes, we wanted to, and no, we couldn't, but yes, we will. So the ceasefire is really not over. They've said on the record, we will attack again the moment we possibly can. That's the ceasefire. Is the minute we can resume this war, it's back on again. So what a wonderful ceasefire and end of the fighting. And maybe it's not just a pause. That's, for the operational benefit of Israel. Although I will say, I think Iran too. I mean, they got hit. Both sides got hit hard. There's no question. In fact, as one commentator I heard put it, it's like these two boxers just beating the crap out of each other. All offense, no defense. Israel's missile defense failed. Iran's missile defense failed. They both hit very hard. But the big strike on Iran was at the very beginning. right? The very first night is Iran knocked out, or Israel knocked out Iran's missile defenses for like 8 hours with a cyber attack. All the missiles came right through. Mossad pulled off this multiple assassination. They assassinated a bunch of their high-level military officials, also a bunch of nuclear engineers, which is a war crime, and their families, which is a war crime. No one in the media complains about that, but whatever. So they did all that. But then Iran did not collapse. It did not. It was not a decapitation strike the way Hezbollah was earlier this year or last year, or Syria. And Iran started shooting back in like a huge way. I think somewhere here I've got a picture of oh, here it is. Hold on. Here is a map of what Iran hit in 12 days, and includes shutting down all their ports, shutting down their international airport, hitting a bunch of military bases, hitting a bunch of refineries. Israel's a pretty small country. They were basically shut down for like the entire 12 days. And there was reporting from like the get-go that they were running out of defense missiles. In fact, there was another story, you can probably look this up. The one of the top air defense missiles are high altitude air defense missiles. We burned through like 10% of our national stocks of these missiles over this 12-day period. So if the fighting is to resume all over again, it looks like at this point Israel has played its card with the Mossad, with the cloak and dagger stuff. But what's going to happen now? So Iran comes out and they say, we are not negotiating. In fact, we're expelling the International Atomic Energy Agency. They will not be allowed to monitor our nuclear weapons or our nuclear energy programs, as they would say. Although there's now a risk they might actually look into nuclear weapons. Like, that's the crazy thing about this, is Israel, with apparently, according to Trump, the full support of the White House, launched an attack on Iran, despite Iran complying with the Non-Proliferation Treaty. And the result is now 400 kilograms of highly enriched uranium has gone missing. And we don't know where it went, which is, let me see if I can find it here. Here's a story from Israel. Israel says it did not destroy all enriched uranium in Iran, tried to assassinate Khamenei. And it was clear from the outset of our attack that we would not eliminate all the material. The assured U.S.-Israeli positions that Iranians will be asked to hand over that material. Or as the commenter says, hey guys, that uranium we didn't destroy, could you just give that to us? So, here's another article about this. Where is Iran's uranium? Search continues for a 400 kilogram stockpile. So, the result of this incredible, wonderful, beautiful, perfect war we had with Iran is that we went from having international inspectors that knew where all of their uranium was and were inspecting the nuclear power plants. Now we have no eyes and no ears on the nuclear facilities, and they've said they're going to rebuild them and they're going to pick right up where they left off, and might even go nuclear for all we know. Wow, that's a great job. What a wonderful war that was. What a perfectly wonderful 12-day war. I'm sure it's over now. I'm sure there won't be any more chapters in this story before now in the next election. So, but there's a few little footnotes, few aftermath items here. This is Trump yesterday. It is, and I think he posted something earlier just like this. It is terrible what they're doing in Israel to Bibi Netanyahu. He is a war hero and a prime minister. He did a fabulous job working with the United States to bring great success in getting rid of the dangerous nuclear threat in Iran. Boy, I hope those words never change in the next few months or so. Importantly, he, meaning Netanyahu, is right now in the process of negotiating a deal with Hamas, which will include getting the hostages back. Isn't it hostage? and by the way, really? You expect us to believe that Netanyahu is negotiating a peace deal with Hamas? Maybe he's in the process of, I don't know, bombing the living daylights out of Palestine again. In fact, I think I just saw the other day, like during the middle of this 12-day war, they bombed the crap out of like the last surviving Christian village in the West Bank. But anyway, never mind that. How is it possible that he can be forced to sit in a courtroom all day long over nothing? Cigars, Bugs Bunny doll, etc. It is a political witch hunt, very similar to the witch hunt that I was forced to endure. This travesty of quote-unquote justice will interfere with both Iran and Hamas negotiations. In other words, it is insanity doing what the out-of-control prosecutors are doing to Bibi Netanyahu. The United States of America spends billions of dollars a year, far more than on any other nation, protecting and supporting Israel. Wait, let me repeat that. That bears repeating. The United States of America spends billions of dollars a year, that's how he wrote it, far more than on any other nation, protecting and supporting Israel. We're not going to stand for this. We just had a great victory with Prime Minister Bibi Netanyahu at the helm. Oh, is that true, Mr. Trump? Mr. Daddy President? You mean Bibi Netanyahu is at the helm of this war? And this greatly tarnishes our victory. Really, I thought it was just like you guys were the parents and these two kids were fighting, you know, like you said with Russia and Ukraine. Let Bibi go. He's got a big job to do. I don't know. I mean, it's at least possible that, I mean, this is sheer speculation that just maybe Trump is furious with Benjamin Netanyahu. I don't know why. It sickens me when they call him Bibi. Like, it's a cute little name, Bibi. Anyway, maybe Trump is really pissed off at Netanyahu for starting this stupid war, and in this cauldron. And this is just like so over the top and so outrageous. It's gonna backfire and make Israel more angry that a foreign country is meddling in the judicial process, and want to, But that's 3D chess. I don't think Trump plays 3D chess. I think we should take this on the face of it. He is just obsessed with Israel and obsessed with his pal Bibi, the guy whose chair he was pushing in at the meeting. You guys see there was a photo of this NATO meeting where Mark Rutte was pushing Trump's chair in as he was sitting down, just like when Trump was pushing in Netanyahu's chair. Here's the photo. I'm sure I can just find it right away. Yeah, here we go. Yep, there's Trump pushing in the chair for Bibi, just like Mark Rutte pushing the chair for Trump. So that's the tier list, guys. It's these Western Europeans are our simps, and then this is Trump. I don't know. I can't say I'm thrilled about this. I guess we'll see. Allegan News says, I don't think Iran can rebuild before the next election, but maybe they will take in China and Russia launchers and goods to rebuild. Maybe they will. So I was reading some articles that apparently Russia offered to go into a defense agreement with Iran and help them out with their air defenses. And Iran said no. This is like about a year ago. And Iran said no for, I guess, two possible reasons. One, because they're very proud, and secondly, because they don't fully trust the Russians, and they didn't want to. Well, maybe this will change their mind, because I think they probably realize they have a really bad counterintelligence problem, and their air defenses ain't so good either. Maybe they will want Russia's help. Maybe they will take it. And we'll see how that goes. Or maybe we won't. But the purpose of this whole Iran affair was to decapitate the country and implode the government, and it didn't happen. So, great stuff to be continued, I guess. So, in the meantime, maybe Trump will do some good things for our country. Or maybe he'll make another peace deal with Rwanda and Congo. Hey, a historic peace deal between Rwanda and Congo. That was what I was knocking on doors for, wasn't it? Weren't you guys all about Trump will bring peace between the Rwandans and the Congolese? And then the parents of that that the guy that Officer Sherd to put down. They could go back to the Congo maybe. Alga News says, yes, Israel is U.S. ally, but it's time for us to be open-eyed on getting manipulated into new wars. What does Israel do for us? How, every single relationship we have with every other country on the planet is you do things for us. That's like the condition of anything is you do something for us. Seems to be different. Rock616 says, what would you do different, Adam? Will you run for U.S. president? This is on Rumble. I will not run for president. What would I do different? Not give our money to foreign countries. Like the end, The foreign policy that's America first is very simple. It's beautiful in its simplicity. You don't bully and threaten and sanction countries. You trade with them. The end. That's all there is to it. There's a comment, I missed this one earlier, from Gritter Dunn on Rumble, says we need to transition to opt-in, not opt-out, talking about the objectionable materials in schools. Well, the problem is you can't ask parents for permission for every single thing you do, but I get the premise, though. There should be opt-ins for enhanced IDs, that kind of thing. Another thing that Trump administration just implemented, by the way, here you now have a real ID mandate. Thanks, Christy Nome. But anyway, Alga News says, I thought it was good for Rwanda and Congo peace deal. Does not harm Trump, only helps him. Good, positive PR. Well, I'm not saying it's bad. I'm just saying that it wasn't what my priority was. I'd really like Trump to focus on this hemisphere. So that'd be nice. By the way, I think
he did. Didn't he attack Canada again this week?
I was wondering what exactly, because Trump has a way of enhancing his accomplishments sometimes. So I was wondering, what exactly did Trump do to broker this Rwanda-Congo peace deal? So I asked Grok. Here's what Grok says. The agreement signed by Rwanda's foreign minister, Olivier Nduhungirehe, and DRC's foreign minister, Therese Kayikwamba Wagner, includes provisions for Rwanda to withdraw. I tried, guys.
No, but it was just funny. It was like this complicated name and then Wagner.
Yeah, Therese Kayikwamba Wagner. Includes provisions for Rwanda to withdraw troops from the eastern DRC within 90 days, the disengagement and disarmament of armed groups like the M23 rebels, whoever they are, the establishment of a regional economic integration framework to attract Western investment, particularly in the DRC's mineral-rich sector, i.e. cobalt, lithium, and gold. Oh, you mean like rare earths? Trump highlighted the deal as a glorious triumph, emphasizing its potential to end a conflict rooted in the 1994 Rwandan genocide, which has killed millions and displaced millions more. However, this is all from Grok. The deal has faced criticism for its vagueness and lack of direct involvement from M23, a key Rwandan-backed militia, raising doubts about its enforceability. Okay, well, I know absolutely nothing about this topic whatsoever, so I don't know if that's going to be a problem or not. But critics, including Nobel laureate Denis Mukwege, argue it failed to address justice or Rwanda's alleged aggression, potentially legitimizing resource exploitation. Oh, so you mean... let me guess, because Trump has talked about how these deals he makes go. The deal is, you give us your natural resources and we will stop you from fighting because they will be ours. Trump also noted U.S. economic interests, saying the deal secures, quote, a lot of mineral rights for American companies, aligning with efforts to counter China's dominance in the region's mineral trade. Oh, okay. So the deal was you give us your natural resources and we'll send some troops over there to stop the fighting or something like that. Maybe. I don't claim to be an expert on this. Nobody watching this stream is an expert on this, and we will all probably never hear about the story again for the rest of our lives, I'm guessing. So
I hope not.
So that is the incredible, amazing peace deal that Trump has brokered with these two countries. So MRGA and MOGA make Rwanda and MCGA and Congo great again. And hopefully we can get back to working on that national debt story one of these days. Alga News says, all peace starts with first steps. Yes, it does. So there you go. Let's, I guess, wait and see. Hopefully this war in Iran never, ever happens ever again. But, you know, I have this weird suspicion that we're going to be hearing like very, very soon that Iran is back at it, trying to develop that nuclear weapon. And guess what? It's not over, but we'll see. We'll see. All right, guys. I think that's going to do it for us for this week. Patty, you got any events coming up you want to plug? Anything?
Well, I just wanted to say good job to Paula and Margaret and the team at the Wayne 12 for their grassroots expo and picnic today.
Yeah, we were both there. It was fantastic. It was nice sharing a tent with you.
Very hot.
It was very hot, but the ice cream was great.
So, the ice cream is all Guernsey.
Oh, good to know.
Yeah, it's all Guernsey. So, have you been to the Guernsey in Novi? It's not far from where I live. They have like a restaurant, and then you can go there and get. They have a lot of flavors in store that you can't get at grocery stores. Anyway, so so that was good. And then Friday is 4th of July, so we will be participating in the Plymouth Parade. So if anybody doesn't have a parade in their local town and they want to walk for an hour, let me know.
What time in Plymouth is your parade?
9 o'clock.
Okay, well, go to that one, and then come to ours in Ypsilanti, which is at noon, and we're walking in that parade as well. Yeah, we have an event. The Washington Republican Club, WashingtonGOPClub.com, has an event at Dan's Downtown Tavern.
Yep, I just signed up.
Tuesday night, 6:30. We have James Dixon from the Michigan Enjoyer is going to be our guest speaker. Also, just confirmed that Laura Perry will be there. She's the candidate for State House in our local Southeast Washtenaw County / Wayne and Monroe County and part of Lenawee County districts. She's fantastic. I actually, I managed to injure myself the other night. I stepped on a screw like so badly that I had to unscrew it to get out of my foot. But I still walked in her parade the other day in Willis, and it was great. Yeah, she's a candidate worth supporting. Allegan News says, I get to ride in our parade. Bonus of being on city council. Mm-hmm. You can ride in any parade. You can ride in our parade. We have a float and bales of hay if you want to. Allegan News says, do we have any candidates for Attorney General, SOS, and Governor yet? Or Republicans waiting to lose again?
Oh, Governor, yeah, too many and too early.
Yeah, we've got like 100 candidates for Governor.
Yeah.
So, and I think at least 1 or 2 for Attorney General and SOS. I heard there were some today. I just didn't catch them.
The AG, yes, Kevin something, he's announced. And the SOS candidate, I am drawing a blank on the name today because I wasn't standing over by the pavilion, so I didn't catch the name.
Well, it's still quite early, so
it's too early.
Yeah, it's much too early.
We have city council elections to win, guys.
Yeah, we don't have to decide on AG and SOS for another year yet. But who knows? Maybe some people will be at the Mackinac conference that we can talk to there. So that's coming up, the Mackinac conference.
September, that'll be here before. I mean, I hate to be a downer, but it'll be here before we know it.
Yep. All right. Well, that will do it for us for tonight, guys. Hopefully, we will have more. Well, we will certainly have a show with Matt Wilkson to talk about the other happy Supreme Court decisions that just came out. So look forward to that. And then I promise next week will be all about Michigan.
Rescue Michigan.
Yeah, we do have that going on at some point to get back to rescuing Michigan. I think I think people shouldn't be quiet about what Trump is up to because he should be facing criticism for spending $1 million attacking the conservatives in the U.S.
Well, I mean, the main thing is how is that going to trickle down and affect our state in 26?
Yeah, infuriating.
Right? I mean, is there going to be a retaliation vote? You know, we have important elections to win here.
Yeah, I mean, why would you give money to the National Republican Congressional Committee when they're going to turn around and spend it attacking Thomas Massie?
Mm-hmm.
I mean, I know it's a different entity than Trump's super PAC, but in Washington, it's all incestuous. So that's how that goes. The more money you give, the more money comes out that end.
Yeah.
So it's very embarrassing look for Trump, and totally, completely unnecessary. Like that.
Well, remember how excited we were watching and doing the live stream on the joint address that he had, like that you showed at the beginning. I mean, And then all the stupid faces by Speaker Johnson, like rolling his eyes. It's like, dude, you voted for this stuff.
Yeah. There's real consequences, folks. I mean, we talked about this last time, but losing Elon Musk is a loss. It is a loss, period. Not a good thing.
Yeah.
So anyway, all right, guys, that'll do it for us for tonight.
Tuesday, is that where you guys had your Christmas party?
Yeah, we did have an event there. Yeah.
Okay.
Yep. If you go to here, I'll put it on the screen. WashingtonGOPclub.com. Click on events, and then there's the link to the event there. It's $5 or free if you're a member. So there you go. All right, guys, that will do it for us for tonight. Until next time, thanks for all you for liberty, and until then, peace.